This week on the Real Housewives of Orange County reunion.
Do this Tammy Wynette thing where you got to stand by your man, and sometimes you just need to be accountable and say, you know what?
I am very
made
accountable.
Some bad choices.
I'm very accountable.
Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the new episode of the Real Housewives of Orange County. That's the season 18 reunion part 1. Let's get right into this. Wow, this first part actually gave a lot to talk about. Okay, so the ladies filmed their reunion on a Sunday, which is not a typical day for them to film. Andy said that this season of OC marks the 100th season of the Real Housewives as a whole franchise. So that is so cool, and no wonder that it was such a good season. So Andy goes around to welcome everyone. Tamra talks about the CO2 treatment that she did that made her look like some demon from Mars. Emily has stopped working out as much as she was before. Heather is busy with construction. Katie's good. So is Gina. Jen is getting ready for her wedding. And Shannon is just, she's just there, ready to wrap this up. So they start with the intentions that they have. And typical Tamra judge. Act horrible all season. Then come reunion, now all of a sudden she's in therapy to discover herself. When Andy asks Shannon what does she think about this, she's like, well, good for her, but she treated me horribly this season, and I too have been discovering myself, and I've realized that I was in a toxic friendship with her. Then it looks like Jen and Emily also have some bad blood. I wasn't really sure what that was about when the reunion first started. Katie said that her intention is to own a couple of things, and then Heather says that her intention is to be friends at the end of this with most of them. So the first season package that they take a look at is Shannon, because she got DUI 10 days after they filmed their reunion of last season. So they showed all the scenes of the reports of the accident, the slash crime, and how the women, especially Tamra, reacted to that. Shannon and Tamra have not spoken at all since filming wrapped. Shannon says that she feels like that at this point she doesn't really think that she needs to defend herself. But yeah, of course she admits that she had a problem with alcohol. And Heather explains why she had agreed with Tamra at some point in the season that Shannon had a problem with alcohol. An interesting question came in for Gina that asked her why was she so supportive of Shannon given that when Gina got her DUI, Shannon used it against her. And Gina explains that obviously Shannon apologized. Gina's obviously related to Shannon, but more than anything, she saw constant remorse and regret from her, that Shannon had constant remorse and regret from her actions. It wasn't like, a Karen Huger and Potomac who was like, deny, deny, deny. So, no, Shannon owed up to it and cried about it many times. And Emily says that she too agrees and feels like Tamara constantly yelling at Shannon that she was an alcoholic and a drunk was counterproductive. And Tamra said that she had a lot of anger, and Shannon sets the record straight again. She tells Tamra, you said that you were there for me after my DUI. You were not. You left to Scotland to film The Traitors after my DUI. Tamra says that when she came back from Scotland, though, Shannon had made phone calls to her, and Shannon was drunk in the phone calls. Shannon vehemently denies this because she says that she was in a program where there was absolutely no drinking. Like, they actually tested them to make sure that they were not drinking. But Tamara is sitting there saying, you did drink. Yes, you did. You did. And Shannon's like, you don't know anything about me. Shannon was getting very mad. But there's no question that, yes, of course Shannon has had a problem with alcohol. They even showed multiple reunions where that was the topic of conversation. But it doesn't take away from Tamra being just horrible to her. Then they talk about Shannon and Heather because when the season began, they talked about building trust. But clearly, Heather was horrible. Shannon showed Heather the picture of the night of her in the DUI. But apparently, Heather was faking it because she already knew that the picture existed. Heather says that she never mentioned it to the group until she heard about it on the Jeff Lewis radio show. To Heather, because it had been talked about on the radio and it was now public, for her it was like, okay, I guess it makes sense for me to talk about it now. But I personally think that the problem with Heather, honestly, was when they were in the trip and she was like, I feel like you're like you used me. That was what I think was probably worse than anything. They Before that, just to wrap that up, Heather says to Shannon, I understand, I apologize, and if you don't trust me with information, don't share it with me. That's how the way that we can rebuild. And they agree on that, but let this be a lesson. Do not trust Heather Dubrow. They then talk about Tamra revealing to Gina that Shannon was planning on saying that Gina threw Travis down the stairs and all that. And Gina says that in the moment she was actually more mad at Tamra for sitting on that and putting it out at the trip. But Shannon explains that Tamra was the one that brought that up because someone reached out to her. And that's the thing about Tamra. Someone is always reaching out and saying things to her. But Tamra keeps saying that Shannon kept calling her intoxicated and that's why she was coming after her this season. Emily says to Tamara, why don't you just apologize? And Tamara says, okay, I'm sorry, but you kept drinking and that made me mad. And Shannon's like, stop saying that. You're saying I'm sorry, but I got the help that I needed. Tamara says, well, okay, that's all I want for you. So Emily tries to be the mediator and says, Shannon, look, you said horrible things about Gina. Y'all were going at it, but you guys forgave each other and moved forward. Can you do that with Tamara? And Shannon says, I appreciate your apology, Tamara. I really do, but I don't want to be your friend. Period. That's right, standing on business. They then talk about the new housewife, Katie. They take a look back at her this season, her family, being adopted, friendships, and feuds. After seeing that, she says that her trip to Korea to meet her birth mother was put on hold because her father-in-law passed away recently. Andy asks her about her son. Why doesn't he want to live with her? She says that he didn't want to leave his friends and his lifestyle in Atlanta, so he lives there with his father. She has another son who did not appear this season, but he didn't appear because his birth dad didn't sign the waiver, but he was living in San Diego during the school year, but he's now with her like officially. But then you guys, Gina jumps in and to say that Katie lied to her because Katie had reached out for she had reached out to Gina for her to use her as like a real estate agent. But Gina says that Katie lied about owning her home in San Diego. And Katie says, no, they wanted 2 years of rental income. And then here comes Emily, but you lied to her. And you made an Instagram reel and you said that you moved. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, calm down. Why are you screaming and shouting about where somebody lives? Calm down. But I do understand why Gina was bringing this up. Gina was saying that there have been a lot of things when it comes to Katie that just seem inconsistent but the truth doesn't add up. And that's a fair question. Andy says that there was recently a $5 million lawsuit involving Katie. She was working on some shot glasses that were like the shape of a golf ball, but she says that it's been dismissed and that it dealt with her business partner and their partner. She was dismissed. That's the bottom line. Heather then says that Sudden Strack from Beverly Hills texted her that Katie used her for some golfing event. Oh, that's messy. Andy then asks Katie about being snubbed by Heather at that Christmas party. And Heather gets activated and says, there's been 3 different versions of the story. And then when Katie tries to correct her, Heather's like, I am still not done talking. Heather claims that it would have been dumb of her to ignore Katie at this party knowing that she was going to be on the show. She's trying to say, why would I do that? Andy then gets into the paparazzi gate. Katie says that she was watching something on TikTok and this story about the paparazzi and Heather came up. She took a screenshot and she reached out to her source. But yet again, Emily Simpson jumps in, being loud and aggressive, saying, you didn't see that on TikTok. Andy says, what did your source say to you? And Katie says that the person told her that someone close to Heather did call the paparazzi because paparazzi don't go to Disneyland. Heather says, I've never called the paparazzi. I was excited to meet you, but you have no credibility and there's something off about you. Katie's just like, okay. She does apologize to Gina for flipping on her, and she says that Tamra put ideas in her head, and that is true. Tamra absolutely did try to give Katie the idea that Gina set her up, And as Gina and Katie are trying to talk things out, the bullies, because that's how they were acting. Now, I'm not saying that what they were saying were lies or they were, not true, but their behavior, the way they were coming at her, was definitely bullying. I'm talking about Heather and Emily. Heather says falsely accusing people is kind of your thing. Then Emily, pretending to know everything about anything, starts to tell the story about Katie and some man. But Katie's like, well, let me tell the story. So she says that one night she was driving with her kids and a man was screaming at her FUB and she pulled off to the side of the road so he could pass her. She says that he then got in front of her car and she called the police. This man started recording her, the kids, the inside of her car, and she says that the man wouldn't stop. He kept cursing and acting crazy, so the police tased him. Heather and Emily interrupt and say that's not what the police said. They say that according to a report of this guy and other police, this man says that he saw Katie texting and driving, and he got mad, but he claims that it was actually Katie who followed him to his house, and he started to record her. Because she was in his house. He says that the police were called and that they tased him. Katie says that it wasn't true, and then she started saying a lot of things like she had a different address, her ex-husband was served, her kids were traumatized, she never showed up to the court, so it was only a one-sided story. Unfortunately for Katie, it was making no sense. Her response was making no sense. At the end of the day, we might never know the truth. The only people that will ever know are her, the guy, and God. And I guess the police. Andy then asks if they have any other questions for Katie, and here comes Emily demanding an explanation as to why Katie lost legal custody of her children. If I were Katie, I would have been like, none of your freaking business. Like, that is way too personal. But she does explain that when after she got divorced, she was in a very hard situation, and because she could not provide a stable home for her children, she was not allowed to have custody. But she starts to cry because, that was a hard time, but she eventually got them back. They take a commercial break, and I thought it was really nice of Heather to tell Katie, I'm sorry that you went through that regarding the kids. I think that all of the things about Sutton, this guy that got arrested, the paparazzi, that's all fair game, but for Emily to bring up the kid custody thing, I was like, So then they switch topics to Jennifer Pedranti storyline, her relationship with Ryan and all of the drama that had to do with him. So they see the scenes of the season, and Jen says that the day that the news of the gambling scandal broke, she was devastated. But apparently, Ryan was already working with the feds at the time. He was cooperating. So Tamra and Emily again, well, why were you surprised? Why didn't he answer our questions? And Jen says that the reason she felt bad when the news came out was because, in her mind, she thought that the only reason this was even in the news was because of her, because she's on this show. Emily then says, I've done so much research on this, and Ryan involvement in all this stuff and him being in the news is not because of you. It's because he testified and he's providing information about his friend Matt. Now, listen, as good as a person as Jen is, she's so naive. So she's like, no, he would never snitch on his friend, on his best friend. Now, we all know how immunity works. So Emily is technically correct, but she was coming across obsessed with the case. She knew every single detail. It's being said that basically, to summarize it in a nutshell, Ryan's friend was doing illegal activities and putting the money of those illegal activities on Ryan's account, and Ryan would get that money to buy chips in Vegas to gamble in casinos. It's very messy. Jen says that Ryan's involvement was simply the fact that the money was in an account with his name. Now, is that true? Probably not. But Emily, you need to calm down. My goodness, she's so obsessed and defensive and just coming at everybody. And she says to Jen, I would have so much respect for you if you admitted that Ryan made mistakes, but instead you stand by your man like Timmy Wynette. My question is, who the hell is Emily for Jen to be owing explanations and need to be explaining things to? Like, no. But that's where the reunion ended. Really good first part. They got into a lot of things. Really messy. Wow. But like I said, you guys, that couch with Tamra, Emily, and Heather were definitely coming across as the bitter, the bullies. But you guys, let me know your thoughts about the whole Katie thing and about Jen, about Shannon and Tamra. Let me know your thoughts. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all next time. Y'all have a great one. Bye.